Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be starting our last unit, Unit 7, and this is actually 2 units put together. So the first part of our unit will be on measurement, and the last part of our unit will be on surface area and volume. Now, topic 7.1 is on measuring devices and reference. I've decided to leave that topic until the end of the unit just in case we run out of time. So we're going to actually start off with topic 7.2, which is unit conversions. Now, I've decided to make this video into 2 parts. Part A, we're going to be looking at the metric system, and then part B, we're going to look at converting between metric and imperial. All right, so first of all, when we're converting in the metric system, it's important to know how the metric system is set up. Now, this is a nice system. This is the system that we use, or is our official system in Canada and mostly throughout the world. And it's a nice system because everything involves multiplying and dividing by 10. So if I were to look at meters, that would be my base unit. And my base unit of meters, if I go from meters to decimeters, my decimeters are 10 times smaller than meters. Centimeters are 10 times smaller than decimeters, and millimeters are 10 times smaller than centimeters. So if I were to go from meters to millimeters, that would be 10 times smaller, another 10 times smaller, so 100 times smaller, and then another 10 times smaller, so 10 cubed, which is 1,000 times smaller. On the reverse, if I'm going from meters to decameters, decameters are 10 times bigger, hectometers are another 10 times bigger, and kilometers are another 10 times bigger. So going from meters to kilometers, kilometers are 10 to the 3 times bigger than meters, so 1,000 times bigger. Now, when we're converting units, if I had 1 meter and I wanted to convert to kilometers, I want my number to get smaller, because if I go from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, my answer or my number should get smaller. So moving from meters to kilometers, 1 meter would actually be 1 divided by 10 to the 3, which is 0.001 kilometers. Or we could say we have 1 meter, and we jump back 1, 2, 3 jumps, and we have 0.001 meters. Now, another way to remember this is to use a mnemonic device. And so one that I'm familiar with, or I've used quite often, is King Henry does usually drink chocolate milk. Now, King Henry's quite famous when it comes to measurement, and I won't get into that today, but there is a video out there about King Henry drinking chocolate milk and drinking a lot of chocolate milk, and in the story, King Henry actually dies unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. So whether you use King Henry does usually drink chocolate milk or King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk, it's just a way to remember the metric system. Now, looking at the metric system, if I want to move from my base unit to any of my other points on the metric system, I just have to count my jumps. Now, you might be asking, well, why did she say unexpectedly? Can't she see that that's meters? Well, the reason we use a U is because this stands for our base unit. So the metric system can work whether we're talking about meters or liters or grams or any other unit in the metric system. So if I want to move from kilometers to meters, I would take my number, my kilometers, let's say it's 1,000 kilometers, and I want to move to meters. So 1, 2, 3 jumps, 3 jumps to the right. I'm going to take that 1,000 and jump my decimal 1, 2, 3 jumps to the right, which will give me 1 million. If, for example, I want to go from centimeters to meters, I'm going to jump back 1, 2. So let's say that I have 10 centimeters. I want to jump back to 1, 2. That gives me 0.1 meters. Or I could have said 10 divided by 10 squared, because it was 2 jumps. So 10 divided by 100 is also 0.1. So I'm just going to erase this here quickly, and something to add to the chart if you were making your own chart is that when I'm moving to the right, I want to be multiplying because I want my number to get bigger. I'm going to be multiplying by factors of 10, and as I'm moving to the left, I want my numbers to be getting smaller, so I'm going to be dividing by multiples of 10. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. When it comes to the metric system, often we're just counting our jumps, but you can also multiply or divide. So we'd be multiplying in this direction and dividing in this direction. All right, so taking a look at our first example here, we have 1 centimeter and we want to convert it to millimeters. So if we go from centimeters to millimeters, that's 1 jump to the right. So we want our decimal to jump 1 to the right. So 1 to the right gives us 10 millimeters. If we want to go from 1 meter to centimeters, going from 1 meter to centimeters is 2 jumps to the right. So 2 jumps to the right is 2 is 100 centimeters. If I want to go 1 meter to 1 meter to millimeters, counting my jumps, I have 3 jumps, 1, 2, 3, and that gives me 1 and 3 jumps, 1, 2, 3, 1,000 millimeters. Now going from kilometers to meters, I have kilometers here is 1, 2, 3 jumps. So I can do 3 jumps, or I can go 1 times 10 to the 3, which is going to be 1,000. All right, looking at meters to centimeters, that's 2 jumps. So I'm going to have 750 centimeters. If I want to go from milligrams to kilograms, this is exactly the same process. It's just that this time I'm going to be using grams instead of meters. So taking a look at this question here, I have milligrams to kilograms. Well, millimeters and milligrams would be the same. Kilometers and kilograms would be the same. That's 6 jumps. And if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left, I want to move my decimal here 6 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left gives me an extra 0. So 0.07235. And we don't need to write that last 0 there because it's just a placeholder. All right, if we want to go from 12 kilometers to millimeters, that's also 6 jumps, but this time it's 6 jumps to the right. So we can count those 6 zeros, or we can go 12 times 10 to the 6, which will give us 12 million millimeters. Going from centiliters to liters, again, the same process. Our meters and our liters are both base units. So if we're going from centiliters to liters, that's 2 jumps to the left. So we can take that 15,700 and divide by 10 to squared, or multiply by 10 to the negative 2. That would be the same value. Or again, just move your decimal back 2. Gives me 157 liters. Going from kilometers to meters is 3 jumps to the right. So multiplying by 10 cubed is 15,000 meters. And going from centimeters to meters, jump back 2 or divide by 100 is 385 meters. And the last 2 questions here, we have 857.8 meters, converting that to centimeters. If we're going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, our number should get bigger. So in this case, we're multiplying by 100. So 85,780 centimeters. And our last question, going from centimeters to millimeters, bigger unit to smaller unit, my number should get bigger. So 1,120 millimeters. All right, so when we're converting within the metric system, again, we can remember that King Henry does usually drink chocolate milk, or poor King Henry died unusually or died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. However you remember it, if we go from king to milk, our units are going from bigger units to smaller units. And if we're moving from bigger units to smaller units, we want our number to get bigger, which means we're multiplying by factors of 10 or multiples of 10. And if we're moving from right to left, we want our numbers to get smaller, because as we go from smaller units to bigger units, our converted amount should get smaller. So we're dividing by multiples of 10. So understanding this piece about bigger to smaller often makes it easier or helps us to decide whether we're going to be multiplying or dividing when we're converting our units. A common question that I get when we're doing any type of conversion is, do I multiply or do I divide? I'm going to show you some steps to help answer that question in our next video, but this is often one of the easiest ways to remember. If I'm going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, my number gets bigger. If I'm going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, the number should get smaller. All right, guys, so that's the metric system. Get ready for part B, and we'll look at converting between systems.